Okay, so I really appreciate the extension. Things were absolutely crazy here, and the extra time really helped. I could have got it done, but it would have been more rushed, and I wanted to do a really good job for you. So hopefully you find this useful. Spend a lot of time on it. I have a basic checklist that I go through, and then I do some, let's close this, a bunch of like audits and scans, whoops, in the background. So everything came up clean, which is the good. Well, there's a few caveats which I'll go over. So this is my company. If you need help with website hosting or website performance, although your website performs pretty good, and you need any design work, let me know. We can help you out. We do all kinds of stuff, local SEO, etc. Let me know. So let's go ahead and jump into it. So there's going to be some background stuff, and I have it broken up kind of into two sections: into web hosting stuff, hosting provider stuff, and then WordPress stuff. So let's go through some background information. Let me make this bigger. So if you follow what I'm going to suggest here, you're going to be more secure than 99% of the WordPress websites out there. Now, I don't have any absolute metric to back that up, but it's just based on my experience, where I've probably secured, I don't know if it's hundreds, but at least 100 websites over the years. And just keep in mind, there's no 100% secure website or WordPress website. There's a saying in security is the only secure computer is one that's turned off and not connected to a network. You know what I mean? If somebody really wants to break into your website, they're going to break into your website. What you want to do from a security point of view is you don't want to be the low-hanging fruit. If you do a lot of research on security, what you'll find out is there's a lot of bots that are in scripts that are constantly looking for vulnerable software, whether it's a WordPress vulnerability or an Apache, which is a web server software vulnerability, or a plugin vulnerability. So in WordPress, you have all the plugins you use. It could be a plugin vulnerability. So if you can obfuscate from showing up in those lists, that's really about the best thing you can do, as well as stay up to date with updates that are provided, right? So I don't know why I'm getting these updates. I thought I had Do Not Disturb on. See, which I do. Oh well, I guess we're going to get little updates I got to close out. Anyway, so goodness, it's going to be annoying. How WordPress websites were compromised. The bottom line, overwhelmingly, it comes through plugins. So a plugin that's not maintained, if you have plugins that aren't being updated at least at a minimum once a year, you want to look for another plugin. Or websites that only maybe have like 10 installs. If there's only 10 installs, you don't really know if it's reliable or not, right? And then plugins that haven't been tested with your WordPress installation, because those may have security vulnerabilities, right? So we'll get it up. And then they'll brute force. So this is people, humans or scripts, guessing passwords over and over and over again until it finally gets in. And then we get into core code, theme, etc., etc. This is just to give you an idea of what's going on. So you're only as strong as your weakest link. So if you have 3 admin accounts, which I believe you do, I did a lot of this most of this yesterday, and I started early in the day, so it's kind of hard to remember. Sometimes I'll come across stuff and I'll forget what I'm talking about until I go back and really think about it. So you're only strong as your weakest link. Bottom line, you could have a 5,000 character password, and you could have the best firewall, but if you have one admin account with the password of password123, then you're going to get compromised. Eventually you will get compromised. So that's important. Have offsite backups for ransomware purposes. We'll get into this, but I'll kind of explain it here. What this means is I like to have backups in 2 places. At my hosting provider is a must. Then I also use Updraft, which I think you have Updraft if I remember correctly. Let's go back and look. You do have Updraft. You have Updraft Plus. I didn't notice that. Let's see if you're scheduling weekly. That's good enough. And then what you want to do is every so often, take one of these backups and put them onto someplace else. Because if your website's compromised or your hosting provider's compromised, they can delete all your backups and they can delete all these, and then you're screwed. So why this is important, especially for ransomware purposes, you got to keep in mind what a lot of ransomware people do. Let me turn off my phone. Let me mute my phone. They're getting smart. They know people have backups. So what they'll do is if they compromise the site, they'll wait 3 to 4 months before telling the owner the site's compromised. Because by then, all backups have expired. And they can say, give me $10,000 in Bitcoin or Monero or whatever. If not, your website's going to be down forever. But at least if you have a backup, you have stored off-site from 3 months ago, at least if you have it once every 3 months, at least you can go back to that restore point rather than having to rebuild everything from scratch. So I would just take one of these, download them, download, and just store that maybe in Microsoft OneDrive or something. Even if you did it once a year, that's better than nothing. But bottom line, think about it. If somebody compromises this website, first thing they're going to do, one of the first things they're going to do is delete all these. And then they're going to go into your hosting provider and delete those backups if they have access to that. So you want to have redundant backups, and you want to have some stored in an offsite location that the attacker doesn't have access to. So it's not just WordPress. Now you're hosted on Ionis, I think that's how you pronounce it. So you really don't have to worry about this as much. But it's not just WordPress. It's PHP vulnerabilities. It's database vulnerabilities. It's Linux vulnerabilities. It's Apache vulnerabilities. But since you don't have your own server, you don't have to worry about this. But this is more exploit stuff, not specific to WordPress. Google your website, see if it shows up in any hack sites. This is something I would do once a month. Just Google your website, see if it shows up in any hack sites. Yours doesn't, so you're good. I would subscribe to this free email newsletter. You get a lot of good stuff. And you can use WordPress. I use WordPress Scan when we'll get into this below when we do the manual scan that I did. I have a paid version of this. It's a command liner scanner. But you can use the free one. Now they actually do have, I think it got renamed, a graphical interface. What did they call it? Anyway, we'll get more into that. But basically, you need to run at least you need to have some type of security plugin. Now you have WordFence installed, I believe it was, but it's not configured. You're using the light version, which I definitely would use a premium version. Now I use Secure WP or Solid WP. It used to be called iTheme Security Pro. You're going to hear me refer to that a lot as we go through this video. Now I don't work for Solid WP, Secure, whatever the heck it's called. They just renamed it, so I never can get it straight. But it's what I use it. Because what used to happen when I would do this, let's say 5 years ago, I would have to have a plugin for, the firewall, a plugin for brute force hacking, a plugin for two-factor authentication, like 6 or 7 different plugins. This one plugin now does 98% of what I need all in one plugin. And since you were gracious enough to give me that extra time, I'm going to go ahead and give you, if you want it, that plugin that I have an agency license for. I'll give it to you and you can configure it. Now I have a video on, if you just go to my YouTube channel, I think it just says iTheme Security Pro. Okay, in this video, I'm going to show you how to... Oh, hold on one second, make sure this is right. Yes. Okay, so I'm going to put this here. Make that not quite as insane. Whatever, 14, that's fine. So it says iTheme Security Pro again because it used to be called iTheme Security Pro. It looks 90% the same, even since they've rebranded it. But this will help you teach you how to configure it. If you want me to configure it, I can help you out with that too. Okay, so where are we moving on to? Hosting provider. Okay, so I logged in. Let me get a sip of water here real quick. There's some things I can't really check, right? So use a strong hosting provider and routinely change it. It's annoying, but this is one of those things you set a calendar reminder for, and you change it ideally every 30 days. I change mine every 90 days. I mean, I probably should do it every 30 days, but I have 10,000 passwords. I don't have time to be... I would spend all day changing passwords, you know what I mean? But it's one of the things you'll never do unless you set a reminder for it. So set a calendar reminder for it. Are FTP accounts valid and created with strong passwords? So I can't really... All I can say is check, because you do have... Where is it? Menu. Let me pause it while I find this. I don't want to waste your time. Okay, you can see here you do have this one user. I just would make sure if you don't need this, delete it. If you are using it, make sure it's using a secure password. And you can say you can see it's available for SFTP and FTP. So it looks like that's the only hosting provider user-related account you have other than your login account. Same thing goes for that. Set up downtime monitoring. So I use Uptime Robot, which is free. Now there's paid solutions, but why this is important is it'll check and make sure your website's up. And you can also use, well, every 5 minutes, okay? And if it detects it's down, you'll get an alert for it. Why this is important is it's very common once an attacker breaks into a site and compromises it, is to take down the website temporarily. Or they might be testing scripts out and it goes up and down, so you need to know about this stuff. Another thing you can do is website change detection, like visual ping. So this won't just check to see that it's up, because it'll actually check to make sure it hasn't changed, like what's on the page, right? Because if they deface it, it'll be up, but it'll actually not be what you want it to be because it's been defaced. So you can do this for free here, right? So there's more advanced solutions, but I like to use free solutions whenever possible. Use two-factor authentication. So I acknowledge your comment. You said you disabled two-factor authentication. Probably the most important, the one most critical thing you can do at this stage is, at this point in where we are at security, is to enable two-factor authentication. So make sure, I know you said you disabled it for a contractor, but go ahead and put that back on. Use Google Search Console. So I don't know if you're using Google Search Console. It's the dashboard for Google Search, so it's used by a lot of SEO people, but it also has a security component too, and it'll send you security alerts if it detects anything. Now, it's also good if, for example, if Google detects there's something fishy with the security of your website and you're not on Google Search Console, you won't know about it. But also from an SEO point of view, it's not going to show you in the search results, or it's going to show you really low because it thinks your site might be compromised, right? Let me get a sip of coffee here. So routinely scan for malware. So you have WordFence installed. I would use Secure Solid WP, but whatever. And just make sure it's scanning routinely. And every so often, I would go out. So let's say you stick with WordFence, which is fine. Once a week, go out here and test your website and see what security detects, right? You want to make sure that, because you want to use multiple products to make sure that your website is not compromised. So I came across this, which we would need to reach out to Ionos. You can see here we care about your security. Found a potential vulnerability. Let me make this screen bigger. Sorry about that. 100%. There we go. But the scan result, there is a low risk for your website. Detected malware and vulnerabilities are not automatically repaired. I think all this is doing is maybe alerting you that you have the basic version and you need to have the paid version. So I don't think there's an actual vulnerability, but it's something I would contact them and clarify what this is saying. Because you can see it's saying order full version now. So I think that's what that is, but we'd have to verify that for sure. Okay, you're using SSL everywhere, you don't have any mixed content, and your whois came out clean. So these are more advanced things, so things can break. So make sure you know what you're doing, right? Disable directory browsing, so that's configured. Not going to waste too much time on it. You can read about it here if you want. Disable file editing, so users can't edit the code in WordPress. That's done, so that's good. It's probably done within WordFence, I would guess. Install WP CLI if possible. I doubt they allow this. But why this is important is it allows you to manage WordPress from a command line. I've probably had to do this in the last year, maybe 10 times. A website's compromised, so you can't use the graphical side of it. You can't log into the website, the back end, like WP admin area, because it's totally destroyed. But you can use WP CLI from a command line interface at the operating system and add and remove users, disable plugins, etc., etc. So that's something you would want to check and see if they allow it. If so, just make sure it's there and installed and ready to go in case you need it. Change your WordPress database prefix. You've already done that, so that's good. Now, this is a critical thing I would do immediately. This is probably the second most critical thing I would do, is restrict access to your dashboard based on IP address. So what this means is, and actually let me see if I put my video. Let me pause it. Okay, are we recording? Yes, we're recording. Here's a video on it I made probably, a few months back. And I will explain to you what this means. So, let's say somebody compromises your WordPress password. They have access to this back end, right? And let's say, but you're like, okay, well, I got two-factor authentication, so that's good. But let's say that gets compromised. Even if both those things are compromised, if you don't have that IP address whitelisted as to somebody who can access this back end, they're not going to be able to. So it's super easy to do. It's annoying if you travel a lot because you have to go in to the operating system that the server's on and update a text file to whitelist an IP address, but it's something I definitely would do. Okay, you don't have error message or reporting, error message and debugging enabled. So why that you have that good, and I'll explain why this is important. If somebody can find a WordPress installation that has debugging turned on, debugging leaks a lot of information about the environment because you need that to troubleshoot the problem. But leaking about the environment can give information to the attacker about what is in the environment, like the plugin versions, directory structure, file permissions, etc., etc. So you want to make sure only have debugging and error message turned on if you're troubleshooting a problem, which you do, but I wanted to let you know why that's important. Disable login hints. You have that. That basically means if you log in with an invalid username and password, it doesn't explicitly tell you which one's wrong. It just says invalid login. You have that. That's good. Hide WordPress version number. So these are the third most critical thing I would do. This, and we're going to get way more into this with this. Now I have, I work with Hide My Ghost. There used to be an AppSumo deal, a lifetime deal. I don't think it exists anymore. But sign up for the email list, and you can get on it. And I'll give it to you for free if you want it, since you work with me. So I don't mind giving it to you for free. So why this is all important is if I go to your website, as a human, like I'm not a robot, I can go to page source, and I can, based on this, look at it and go, oh, WP content, this is a WordPress installation. Then deciphering all this other stuff, version 5.483. So this is, I don't know, RevSlider. So this is version 5.483 of the RevSlider plugin on a WordPress installation. And also because they have this README, and this README says it's PHP 7.2.2.4. Okay, so this must mean it's WordPress 6.8 or whatever it is, right? So all these things, all these footprints, all these what's called signatures can be used to gather information on what your environment is, right? So from a human point of view, it's very easy to determine all the versions of all these things. Once I have the versions of all these things, if I have an exploit for that version of RevSlider, of WordPress, of Apache, then I'm able to go exploit it. So there are humans going and doing this, but there's a lot of scripts, and it's going to get a lot crazier. That all this stuff's going to be really easy to detect. So, but how a human might do this is go here, and let's say you're running Apache. So I'd go, okay, so let me go to Shodan. And I'll look for all servers running Apache. I'm not going to put a version in because I don't remember the syntax off the top of my head. So this server's running. So let's say I search for, so if I had an exploit for Apache 2.215, right here, this is the site I could compromise right now. This is essentially a directory, kind of like Google for the Internet of Things, for things connected to the Internet, right? So you could do this with all kinds of things. And as you can see, as we'll get into below, using WP Scan, I can fingerprint CMaster. You're using CMaster's mega menu. You're using contact form version 5.98. You're using cookie law info plugin 3.27. So if I have exploits for this stuff, I'm going to go compromise your website. So what you want to do is hide as much of this as possible. There's no way to do it 100%. However, if you can not be the low-hanging fruit, if you can hide from the bots and the scripts, people are just going to ignore you. Keep in mind, humans have finite resources. They're going, so what I used to do when I was kind of more on the dark side, I mean, we're talking, I'm almost 50 now, like over 30 years ago now when there was BBSs. We would do things called war dialers. So I would leave my modem running, and it would dial phone number after phone number all night, overnight, all night. And then I would wake up in the next morning, and I would have like 10 numbers that had modem connections, okay? Like some kind of connection. And I would log in. If it's something I didn't recognize, I would just keep going because I know there's very easy things I can mess with, right? So the point is you want to be one of those weird, obscure things. You don't want to be one of these easy things like, oh, cookie law info 3.27, I have that exploit, easy, I'll compromise this right now. What you want to do is use, so if you go to my website, I don't know why it's slow there. Out of curiosity, let me just check something. I think it's because I was the first visitor today. So hopefully that's what it was. Okay, that's better. So if you look at my source code, you look at the directories, you can see I have changed I think this might be the WP admin directory to storage. On the operating system, it still is. Actually, I'm not sure what. I don't remember what I've mirrored that to. But you can see like norzer.me/lib. This is WP. I don't remember which one it is, honestly, to be perfectly honest with you. But the point is, I have obfuscated that this is a WordPress installation. Can it still be detected? Yeah, because look, WP JSON isn't obfuscated. Okay, but you're not the low-hanging fruit. So if somebody's searching for, like, I ran a scan on mine, in yours I can get plugin information on most plugins that you're running. On mine it came up and said no plugins detected. Because none of my plugins are in the WP content directory because I've changed the WP content directory. I think mine it's called like dev content or something like that, right? So that's where a tool like Ghost comes in and can do that. Now you got to test it. It can get kind of flaky. It's actually pretty good. But I'm saying at the beginning, until you test it and make sure you know what you're doing, it can flake out. But once you get it going, you kind of set it and forget it. So that's another critical thing. I mean, this right here is just going to hide you from so many scripts and bot attacks. It's because it's going to determine what plugins if it doesn't detect any plugins, that bot's just going to move to the next one. Now, if a human sat there and did it, it's going to figure it out. But the point is, it goes back to my original point, is if somebody wants to break into your website, they're going to find their way in. Okay. And so this is a free plugin, WP Hide and Security, if you want to play with that. And Shodan's that search engine that I just showed you. If you're using Cloudflare, that's good. So delete README, HTML, WP config. So these are all things you want to delete. As I showed you, just based on that README being there, because every version of WordPress, the README changes a little bit. Like the PHP requirement changes or whatever the other things in there are. So you can determine what version of WordPress that is based on what's in these files. So you don't need the sample PHP file, so get rid of it. You don't need the install PHP file, so get rid of it. The license file, etc., etc. Now, it's something you have to do after each update. So what I do, I just have a cron job that runs once a day, and if these files exist on the operating system, it just deletes them. So again, you could run it every minute if you wanted to be super paranoid. But, there's something in security called managing the risk. You could be super paranoid and do everything possible, and your website still might get compromised. But you can manage the risk effectively and do significantly better than other and statistically significantly decrease the chance your website gets compromised by taking just a few simple actions. And I'm going to pause it real quick, and I'll be right back in a couple minutes. Okay, so let's move on to very much more WordPress specific stuff. So what I do is, this is again something you'd want to set a calendar reminder for. Just once a week, go to, I never can remember where the heck it's at. Tools, right? I've been using WordPress for 10 years and I can't remember like where plugins is. Site health. And you can see here, if you ever wanted to know like PHP version, any of that stuff, you can go to info, all kinds of good stuff here, and then go to server. And there's all kinds of good information here. However, what we're talking about, you go to status, there's a few things here that require your attention. Remove inactive plugins, absolutely. We'll get into that. Inactive themes, same thing. One or more recommended modules are missing, so we need to definitely go and find out what's going on there. Outdated SQL Server, that's something you definitely should address. A scheduled event is late. I don't think I've ever seen that in that there. How you would even get rid of it. Interesting. Okay. You should use persistent object cache from a performance point of view. I definitely would recommend that. 301 HT access redirect is not enabled. Okay, well, something I would find out what specific, is it talking about from HTTP to HTTPS? I don't know if that's something I would look into. Yeah, this is a security thing, so you want to get all these headers installed. Now, this can be a little tricky if you don't manage your own server. Sometimes you can't do all this stuff. If you can do it, it's all pretty simple. I would just throw this into AI and say, how do I fix this? And it's basically 1 or 2 lines of code that go into configuration files on the operating system. It's not really that complicated. It can be a little tricky, but email domain issues detected. So yeah, this is stuff. This is all really important. If you're sending email out and you notice it's going to spam, fixing this stuff is going to reduce that significantly. So that's all important stuff there. Is PHP up to date? As I just showed you, yeah, it is. You're a recent version, 8 point whatever it is. Never give your username and password, main username and password to a contractor. That's good. That wasn't like a test, but you didn't give me your admin password, your admin username and password, which is good. You did change the admin username, which is great. Does every user still need access? So there's, of course, no way for me to be able to tell, but I would go here. I never can remember. As I said, users, all users. I think you have 3 users. After I'm done here, you want to get rid of me. So what I do when I bring contractors on to work on my site or a client site, because I just get so busy, as I'm sure you do, I forget everything. As soon as I add somebody to a site or a client site, I set a calendar reminder 2 weeks from now that says, remove Bob from client site A. Because I'll forget, and then a year later, I'll have 8,000 contractors from 27 different countries, all on different client sites, and that's never good. So just make sure, obviously, you need access. Does this person still need access? If not, get rid of it. Oh, and Solid WP Security. And again, I have nothing to do with this company, right? Solid WP. It's just, I love the product. It'll notify you of users that haven't logged in 30 days. Then you can go in and get rid of them. Does everyone with admin access need access? So go check that. It's those 3 users. Is your admin email correct? So just make sure this is correct, because you need to get those admin emails. As annoying as they are, especially when you have like Solid WP installed, you're going to get a bunch of emails. When you can go into Solid WP, and I think I go over this in the video, and you can disable a lot of the individual emails and put them all into a daily digest. So it's annoying, but it's necessary to get those. Use unique passwords. So there's no way to enforce this, because WordPress doesn't know what password you're using on Google, at your bank, on Netflix, etc. But you want to make sure you don't use the same the same password across websites, obviously, because if your Netflix password is what you're using on your WordPress site and that gets hacked and it gets leaked and gets put on the dark web, then they can log into your website with it. Disable anyone can register. That's okay. For strong passwords. So you actually are doing this through, before I forget, you're actually doing this through WordFence. I'm not a WordFence pro. Yeah, WordFence. However, I don't think you have the firewall turned on. Right here. So it's kind of the main benefit of the product. So unless there's a reason you don't have it turned on, I would turn it on. And you have a hodgepodge of these features they have configured. So I'd go through these one by one, and I went through them and noted what I saw. But yeah, so that you need to go through all that stuff. But at a minimum, I think you should have that firewall turned on. So what this is the plugin you can use for this. But there's also like a third-party plugin that all it does, it's called No Weak Passwords. That's what these 2 lines mean. Two-factor authentication, these are different plugins you can use. WordFence actually does it, but I definitely would do that. It's probably the most important thing you could do, as I mentioned above. Whoops. Star. Change the login page. So you don't want it to be at WP admin. And you can do this. The paid version of WordFence might do this, but you can do it with Solid WP Security. You can do it within the code itself, or you can use something like Protect Your Admin. Basically, you don't want the login page to be WP Login or WP Admin, because that's what a hacker is going to go to and try to brute force. Now, most brute force attacks are scripts and bots. I get that, but you don't want to. You're trying to not become the low-hanging fruit, as we discussed earlier. You want to put up as many roadblocks as possible. So my login, well, I'm not going to say it on Norzer, isn't. You don't go to norzer-.me/WP-login or WP-admin. What you go to is / it's not this, but Ryan login, something like that. Limit login attempts. So you have that with WordFence right now. Like after 3 attempts, you want that IP address to be blocked or whatever it might be. Add CAPTCHA to login page. If you're not having a problem with a bunch of spam login attempts, hacking login attempts, don't worry about this. But if it's something you want to do, Solid WP can do it. I don't know why I put that. It should just be Solid WP Security can do this. I'm sure WordPress probably can too. Check have I been owned. So I put your email into here, and you have that's have I been owned, right? And your email address does show up in some of these hack lists, like because all of our email addresses have showed up in these hack lists. Basically, just put your email address in here and get an alert anytime your email address has shown up in a hacked list, so you can be notified of it proactively. Okay, so you routinely back up your site and have at least one backup from 2 different sources, which we went over. So update, updraft, and your hosting provider, and then I kind of went over this too. So you don't right now have on your, we go to, again, been using WordPress for years, never can find the plugins. Plugins. At a minimum, I would have enable automatic updates for all these. So you have it for some of them, but not for all of them. So the quick way is, unless there's a reason, like if you're an enterprise, you want to check and test every little update, but who has time to test every time an update's pushed? So I do this and enable auto updates. You can use other plugins, including Solid WP, and you can really fine tune it, but I think this is sufficient. So only use plugins that are still maintained. I don't love plugins that haven't been updated in over a year or have under 1,000 installs. Check the plugin support messages. So if you look at the support message group, the support message form for a plugin, and all the posts are about, oh my God, this WordPress has a vulnerability and got me hacked, it's something to steer away from. So I went through all your plugins. This isn't a security thing, but there is this message here. One or more plugins have been enabled or disabled, clear the cache. Oh, wait. That's not. It did say, interesting. It said you were using 2 image optimization plugins, and I think you are. So let's do this real quick. Okay, maybe oh, here we go. Smush Pro, right? So Smush Pro is probably optimizing images, and I think WP Rocket is probably optimizing images as well. So you don't want to have both those installed. I don't know where that message went. It used to be a message up here saying you had conflicting image optimization plugins. So I went to Flamingo. I understand why Flamingo is important. So, I don't think there's an alternative, honestly. But if you go in here and you go to view details, it hasn't been updated like in 3 years, I don't think. Oh, no, 8 months, which is, it's not good, but it's okay. But hasn't been tested with your current version. I get the importance of Flamingo, and I don't think there's a competitor to it. So some things you can't really get rid of, right? So you might have to invest in a premium contact plugin, something like that. But sit on it. If it goes a year, it's something I really would be concerned about. List shortcode widgets. Let's go back to this. I think this is the one that's been years. Updated 3 years ago, has not been tested with your current version, and only has 100 installs. This is a huge red flag. Doesn't mean there's problems with it? No. But this is not something I would have I would definitely not put this on a client site. So it's something I would look for an alternative for. Or if you need some custom code, my company can create a plugin for you and do it for you. Simple back screen. Looking at the same kind of thing here. I think this is years too. 2 years ago, hasn't been tested. So I get it, but it's something at least it has 10,000 installs. Let's do this. Hasn't been tested with the last 3 major releases of WordPresses. That's a big deal. So I would look through here, the last 2024, 2022. Yeah, this is not something I would take this off immediately and find another solution. Again, if you need custom design work, we can help you out. That's fine. Verify all plugins enabled are being used. So why this is important is we all love plugins. Are you actually using Slider Revolution? Are you actually using this? So you need to go through these one by one and determine if you really need them. Are you using Location Country Blocker? If not, get rid of it, because all these are attack vectors. All these, let's say Country Blocker. Let's say you're not using it, but an exploit gets put in the wild for 2.37, and you get compromised for a plugin you're not even using. That's super annoying. At least if you're gonna get hacked, let it be for a plugin that's you're actually getting value from. You know what I mean? Okay, so WordPress plugin. So that's a continuation of this. Okay, I did run a scan. I installed some third-party tools, and I did a WP scan. You don't currently have any vulnerabilities as far as I could see. Doesn't mean you won't tomorrow. Doesn't mean you won't know an hour from now. And it doesn't mean there's vulnerabilities that just aren't reported. The overwhelming majority of vulnerabilities that I've played with back when I used to do this were never reported in the mainstream. If somebody found a vulnerability, like a truly malicious person, they would keep it to themselves. Let me get a sip of coffee here. So use theme that's being maintained. You're using Astra, if I remember correctly. So appearance, again, can't remember where anything is. Themes. And while we're in the theme section, look at all these updates you need for these themes. If you're not using these themes, I would get rid of these. Boom. Now they're the generic WordPress themes, I get it. But look at this. Are you using Psychology Help? I don't know. But you probably don't need 2017 anymore. I would get rid of this. Maybe if you just want to keep the one, keep 2024. If you're going to keep these, at least just update them. I don't even know what this is. Let's see. Yeah, and who knows the last time this was updated. So you could Google around and find out a little bit. Okay, getting close to the end. I try to keep these videos under an hour. Okay, disable pingbacks. Actually got rid of that because that's not really even a thing much anymore, so that shouldn't have been there. Disable the REST API. So you just don't want to expose all information about your environment to people unless they're authenticated. So this is something I would do. So for example, you go here. There's all kinds of information. I saw Yoast appear. Look at all this. So Yoast, if you dug in there, you could kind of find version information on it. There's all kinds of stuff that's provided here about your installation. This should not be able to be accessed by anybody unless they are authenticated to the environment, right? So you can use a plugin to do that. Solid WP does it. Or you can use it. This is a standalone plugin called Disable REST API. I would also, for sure, in Solid WP Security, Solid WP, I don't know why I have Solid here twice. I'm not even sure if that's what it's called. Let's look real quick. Solid. Like I said, they recently changed it. And I still want to call it iTheme Security Pro. So it's just Solid WP Security. Okay, so why this is important is it's going to monitor and log changes to your website. So if your website's compromised, this is also just a good practice. You can monitor, especially if you have multiple people working on your website. Let's say something breaks. You can go see the last 3 changes made to the website, whether it was a theme update or some change made to, whatever it is. The best plugin for this is WP Activity Log. However, Solid WP Security does have a pretty good activity monitor. It's not quite as detailed as this one. There's a free version of this that's pretty good, but there's also a paid version. If you want hardcore logging, I would do this. If you want just good limited, good baseline logging that covers 80% of what you need, that's fine. And there might be other ones. I'm just giving you the ones that I'm familiar with and I've worked with in the past. Get notified when somebody logs in. Now this is the only plugin I use. Let me pause it. It's the only plugin I use that isn't tested. And this reminds me, this is something my company needs to create. I keep forgetting this. Let me pause it. I'm going to set a reminder to my. Okay, so why this is important is if somebody attempts to log in with an admin account or is logged in with an admin account, you wanted to get an email notification knowing that's happening, right? Because if you're starting to see, if somebody's logging in obviously your email account and it's not you, that's a big problem, right? So come back to me in a few months and hopefully we'll have this plugin created and you can have it for free. Just too many other things going on. Probably same with you. So this just basically says you want to use a web application firewall plugin. Now your hosting provider at a different level is doing a lot of this stuff, but it always helps to have it done for your specific environment as well. I use this, obviously. Oh, there's a link to my tutorial here. Using WordFence and you're using the light version. I don't like to buy a lot of plugins, but a security plugin is one that I would buy. And again, I'm happy to give you mine for free, the one I have an agency license to. So as long as I'm doing this, you'll be able to use it. Don't have to pay for it. Nothing, totally free. Free updates, whatever. But if you're going to use WordFence, if you do want to use WordFence, I would definitely get the paid version and really take the time to learn it and configure it properly. File change detection. So why this is important is if somebody changes a file on the operating system, you want to know about it because that's what hackers do. Well, I shouldn't say we, I'm not anymore. It used to be, like I said, 20 years ago. We would go in and modify files after we compromise the system, okay? So you want to know if if WP config changes, you want to be alerted to that. A file change detection utility is built into Solid WP, and I know it sounds redundant, but there's an independent plugin called Website File Change Monitor. Disable XML RPC. It's not really used anymore. I would just go ahead and disable it. You can do it with Solid WP. A lot of this stuff that I say you can do with Solid WP or plugin A, plugin B. You can also do it by updating the code, but nobody wants to update the code. Implement spam detection if you think it's necessary. So that's basically it. And let me show you. So it's kind of the WP scan output. So I basically just run a scan from Kali Linux to any host, and you can search for plugin vulnerabilities. You can search for user account data. You can enumerate stuff. You can see XML RPC is enabled. WordPress README found. So this is one way it helped determine that this is a WordPress site. So let's get rid of this. Confidence 100%. So if we could get rid of this, it might reduce the confidence to overall, let's say to 82%. And when somebody's writing a bot or a script to detect WordPress, a lot of times they could write it to find WordPress websites and only give me WordPress websites that you have a confidence of over 90% or higher that they're WordPress websites. So all of these things that you can remove that are telling these scripts and bots that your website is a WordPress website, the better. External prompt seems to be enabled. So WordPress version 6.6 identified. You can kind of see this is where it's getting it all from. See, it got it 6. So if we could disable these query strings, whatever. Can't always do it. You can't always do it. So it detected you're using Astra version 4.83, and it found, because it found the Astra readme.txt file. So let's just go look at that real quick. So because this existed, so you can see it says tested up to 6.6 requires these specific numbers are probably and I don't know the footprint, how exactly it's doing it, but this probably changes with every update, okay? Unless it explicitly mentions the version in here, which I don't think it does. But these are specific to version 4.83. Along with, it found the styles, cascading style sheet. So it wouldn't. So if we got rid of this, it wouldn't find this. If we change the WP content directory or we aliased it, it's not really going to change to dev content. It wouldn't be able to get this, and then it wouldn't detect that you have Astra. Or it may find something else, and then we go try to fix that. Oh, you found your 404s to 4.8.4. See, 80% confidence. So if we can get that lower and lower, the better. So it still might determine it, but it might say this is Astra with 40% confidence. And it just goes on and on. So you can see it found all kinds of other stuff. So I hope this helped. I really appreciate the time. If you need any help with any of this stuff, let me know. A review is greatly appreciated. If there's something I didn't cover that you expected me to cover, before leaving a negative review, I'd ask that you allow me to do that, because I like doing these, and I do like helping people out, and I do like spending time on these. I'm here for questions. If you need just advice on any of this stuff, how to do this stuff, whether it's now, whether it's a week from now, 2 months from now, 2 years from now, you can always message me and I'll get back to you. Yeah, so I think that's it. So I appreciate it, and I hope to hear from you soon, and a review is greatly appreciated, and see ya. Thank you.
you.